You know, like people. It's this movie where this guy's like Hoover it, and he had to like play vacuum.
Hoover.
Like a Hoover. Does that have to do with the president?
No, but it's vacuum.
Is it named after?
Okay, who did Hoover defeat in 1928 for the presidency?
Al Smith.
And Al Smith, what religion was Smith? Now, he was a Catholic, and the thing about was there was anti-Catholic bias, undoubtedly. But there was also a huge urban versus rural. And I thought about playing this to you before, but I thought this would be a good thing to start the Great Depression. And so Al Smith, huh?
We're gonna listen to his voice.
Yeah, right now.
Okay.
And this was the first election where there was nationwide radio. You'd be transmitter to transmitter, but you could listen to someone speak in New York and here in Helena. And that's a remarkable change. So you could be anywhere in the country and hear presidential candidates. So this is the first time in history that you had nationwide broadcasting and therefore advertising of presidents. Now the next president, Franklin Roosevelt, would use the radio and the media like nobody ever has. But think about before it didn't matter because very few people ever actually heard you speak. Let's listen to
So wait, who is this speaking? Coolidge?
this is going to be Al Smith.
Are we gonna listen to Coolidge?
Not this. We listened to a little bit of that movie.
Who we just to yesterday?
Election against Hoover in 1928 because of the religious issue.
Okay, this narrator.
Could his voice also have been a factor to voters outside of the Northeast?
Now let's look at the record. Prohibition has found a new line of endeavor for the underworld. They brought life to the bootleggers, and the bootleggers begot the hijackers, and the hijackers begot the racketeers. My friends in the radio audience, try it out. The only cure for the end of democracy is more democracy.
That voice is awesome. I would do that voice all the time if I could till my throat.
Did you smell?
Well, everyone smoked.
Yeah, this is true.
But grew up in the Five Points, pretty rough area in New York. Yeah, it's a rough New York accent with smoking and drinking a lot. And in fact, that was what he wanted to end prohibition to go around with glasses of milk to kind of mock the temperance movement. But think about someone in Helena or Peoria, Illinois, or someplace like that. Think about when they hear Al Smith talk. Okay, to New York City, that sounds like a New Yorker. Okay, that's one of us. But outside of New York City, what's it sound like? Because that's a cartoon character.
A New Yorker.
Gangster, doesn't it? They think Al Capone or somebody?
Yeah.
Now that would be kind of cool to have a president sound like that, I think.
I used to watch this movie when I was little, and it's called All Dogs Go to Heaven. And there was this,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
there's this like dog that was like, it was like I guess he represented the devil, and it was really weird. And he sounds just like him. It was
That's really weird.
Oh, I wish
You're
I
right.
was.
I totally remember that. I remember that.
But
If you had that voice, I feel like I would do worse in this class, like listening to lecture. I'd probably just like, just hear.
it ended my teaching career
Or I
pretty
would've
fast because
dropped
my
it.
throat would probably just have.
I just got to.
Now the thing is though, you have Al Smith talking. You can imagine how this kind of terrified rural America, especially when they were thinking, we want to get back to the way things were, not a gangster. And we will hear FDR. Well, we were going to hear FDR. Then I forgot. Tomorrow, we're only gonna have half a class anyways.
Why? Because then we have to learn about that whole.
The bigger, faster, stronger balance test.
What?
But we have a 20-minute thing on that. I forgot about that. We're going to go down to the basement computer lab and learn about. You're going to watch a animated PowerPoint.
During this period.
What is this doing? Like, what is the show? This?
Well, let me try to explain to you the best I can, in the best way possible. To measure how we are doing as teachers in classrooms, you're going to take a test designed by people who have never met or actually had anything to do with high school, and they wrote questions. You're going to answer these questions. You're never going to see your score or know how you did on it, and never take that test again, and that will tell us how we are doing in our classroom.
Good news, if you go to your counselor, you can get them to opt out of it.
No, you can't. Actually, definitely you can. But the point is, we got to do this test, and I'm irritated. I'm not saying it's a good test or bad test,
This is like the new.
but think how many tests we have, and it's becoming ridiculous.
I'm sure
This is the person that gets the test.
You got Jet Talk.
Yeah.
We did last year.
I'm not disagreeing.
We did.
Now, you guys deserve it. No, you're right.
For the second time.
They looked at this class and it had nothing to do with what you did. They're just like, we're gonna we can do it next year, but no, we're gonna get it down.
Nothing. You're never gonna see the score right that you don't do.
Well, the thing about it is that, yeah, I don't know.
That's just
Nobody's
silly.
gonna take
Wait,
it
so why are we
seriously.
taking
Is it like art?
No idea.
This is
I have absolutely no idea.
straight up.
So, no, it irritates me because it frankly, it takes this, we have the ACT coming up, which is ridiculous stuff. And the point is, it's just more and more days they take away.
At least with the ACT, you can get it.
But like, I think the ACT thing is really cool that they pay for it.
Yeah.
But-
Why is the AP test for this class? It's just like.
May 14th. Remember, when do you have to pay?
21st.
Next Friday.
Next Friday.
Right now.
Oh, yeah.
You gotta give it to.
No, the business office.
It takes forever.
All right, so let's go and get through this then. The Great Depression. And the thing about the Great Depression was Hoover was elected president. By the time he's inaugurated, the Depression was already beginning. The economy had begun falling. So what it meant is, do you remember this term, GDP?
Gross domestic product.
Yeah, that's the size of the economy. Gross domestic product.
And the household debt was equal to it, right?
Yep. The gross domestic product that was shrinking. Normally, even in mediocre economic times like right now, it grows a little bit at least. So normally it grows because the economy is getting bigger, there's a bigger population, it's going to grow. If it starts shrinking, in fact, if it shrinks for 3 straight quarters, that's what we call a recession. It had already begun.
That was a depression.
No.
That's the size of the.
Well, that's just what they're calling it. We're talking about the technical economic term. Depression is just more of a name. And a recession was just a name. Now we give it a technical term. It had begun when Hoover was inaugurated. It was already beginning. And it's not necessarily because of Hoover.
So it started shrinking. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it was shrinking. We know that now. They could tell things were worse. 28 was not actually a very good year. The growth it was not growing as fast. And so there was a feeling that things weren't as good. But 29, it had already begun. Most people think it's a stock market crash in October of 29. But the stock market crash, as what happened in 2008, it happens after the crash had already begun.
But that's like the big signal.
The what?
Is it?
Yeah, that's when they knew for a fact. And then what happened was the credit market froze.
So
People got loaning money.
this was after the crash or before the crash?
This is actually the beginning of this is before the actual stock market crash. It had already, huh?
Did it kind of cause the crash?
Yeah, it's caused. I mean, it's,
Is it the beginning of it?
yeah, it's one of the couple reasons why the crash happened. But what it meant is there's already an economic bust, but the stock market crash is definitely related to that. But when the stock market crashed, that's when the economy literally went in free fall. You experienced something like that, the winter of 2008, 2009. The economy, U.S. economy was in a similar, not as bad as FDR, but similar free fall. So when Hoover was elected, it's not that he caused it, even though after he's president, he didn't
Too much.
No, that wasn't his belief. He believed in trickle-down economics, social Darwinism. Yeah, because you have a third of the population unemployed, what do you do, Bob? According to Hoover.
Is the rich richer?
Yeah, do nothing about it.
So,
They'll just get out of it.
That's how it's.
And so he's going to get blamed for a lot, but he agreed with the policies before him. And so that is why by 31, 32, homeless people would start calling their shanty towns Hoovervilles, after him. That's not a compliment. And when it happened, but most people look at the crash. So the economy's already doing bad, starting 28, 29 the recession began, but the stock market's a little bit different. The stock market kept going up, while the economy was actually dropping. People are investing more. And that is an essence of remember, we have a speculative bubble. We had the one in real estate and had it in the stock market. Do you remember the boom-bust cycle? What's the first step of the bust?
overproduction.
And what does everybody do When there's overproduction, prices are dropping and profits are dropping, what do?
Make more.
They produce more. Same thing here. Even with people who are speculating in the stock market, oh, our returns might not be as high. Let's double down on our bet and buy more stock.
That makes sense.
No, but the feeling that the stock market will continue to grow doesn't leave them. So they think, okay, it's not growing as fast, or there might be some bad signs in the economy, but I'm still going to make money. I'm going to bet more. I'm going to take out one more loan out. That winter, the lucky investors, or kind of figured out things weren't bad, or things were going bad, they started selling their stock.
So that starts it.
And in August, that's the first real hit to the stock market.
Is that like when people, like the boom busting, when like, people pull back their money from the banks and stuff?
Yeah, that's already happened in the general economy, and then the stock market for the speculation, which is similar, happened there.
In August?
And what happened was in August, there was a big crash. Basically what happened, were a couple of car companies reported, it was normal to lie about how much money you made and how many cars you sold or whatever. Let me say not normal, it was expected that you're lying. Ah, what a time. But
Don't they have to be more truthful, like they're not completely
more. Technically that would be transparent. Today, that means open up their books, essentially. But in August, that was the first time where people realized, oh, stocks are overvalued. And it was like just a slap to the face of the market. Boom! And prices drop, topple they tumble, and then people are still thinking, oh, stocks will go back up. And that's where they started calling it after this, looking back, a sucker's market. If prices start tumbling just a little bit, so prices are dropping, a lot of people thought, wow, the stocks are cheaper now. Now it's time to buy.
And then the smart people are like, they're like, sell.
And so in August, there was the first real shock, then it became a sucker's market, where people started investing in and then went back up again. The stock market went back up. Yeah.
So they are really 90% still on these stocks.
Oh yeah, they're all doing it.
So
The sucker's market is when people when actually the stocks are way overvalued and they're going to tumble, but suckers are people who think, oh, I can still buy and make money. So they're suckers, they don't realize that they're going to lose their shirts. It's not a compliment. And, we just went over this pretty quick, but in October was the big crash. October is when the realization is going to hit, and it's going to be a 2-day thing. October 24th will be called Black Tuesday. No, Thursday, I'm sorry, I'm jumping. Thursday. What's Black Thursday? Stock values tumble. Now, back in the 1920s, in fact, all the way, they would do something like this till the 1970s. They got the values of stock on a ticker tape machine. A ticker tape is a telegraph line, and it's a little telegraph, and the code comes into a little machine that decodes it very quickly, then it has a printer, and prints out on a sheet of paper about this wide, just a little strip of paper, and in it has all the stock values, and that's how they told stock values if you weren't there. And so stockbrokers would not be on Wall Street, on the floor. They'd have sellers on the floor.
That sounds like.
And they would sit back and at their offices and they would read this teletype machine. And if you ever looked at stock values today, these are corporations, we're not talking people, these are corporations. They have a 3-letter code for all companies. And then usually a 3-number figure for their stock value. That's a legacy of this. So it could print just a little bit on a little tiny piece of paper. So you would read it, and you get then go through A through Z, then start over again. Someone would type that in all the time. And you would read that. If there's a lot of sales, then the telegraph lines get jammed and it slows down. On the 24th, that afternoon, it stopped for 3 hours. Can you imagine? Yeah, it's called a ticker tape. And so they're reading these little things, and all of a sudden, it's like stocks aren't doing well. Stocks. Should I sell? And all of a sudden, boom, no more information.
Does that mean it was because nobody was buying or because they got jammed?
They were selling so many stock that it got jammed. The line's overloaded. People are selling like mad. When sell, what's happened to the price?
Drop.
Just imagine the panic. You're sitting in your office and all of a sudden, ah! And that made things worse.
Because now they're like, so.
And today you can go right there on the computer and go to the Wall Street webpage, go to.
You know on your iPhone, so you know when you like pull down one. Yeah. I have an app.
Yeah, they have. In fact, I have that on my
Right away.
And it's
iPhone.
built into your phone.
Eh?
Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
get rid of it.
Yeah, the iPhone you can't get rid of it, can you? And yeah, so you can go look at that. And but now it's continuous, which by the way can be bad too. If the price is dropping really fast.
And then,
I remember in 2008 after the crash. So this is in September of 2008. And President Bush was coming out giving a speech, essentially trying to say, things aren't that bad. It's okay, don't panic. And they had the Dow Jones, which is an average of the 30 biggest stocks, 30 biggest companies. It's just a ratio. So it gives you a kind of an idea of the value of the stock market. And it's just a ratio. Now the ratio is like $16,000. 16,000 is pretty amazing. But they had the stock number next to them. And so if it goes down, it's kind of like an idea that the stock market's generally doing poorly. If it goes up, stocks are generally doing well. That's all it means. They had this number next to me to give it the speech, and they had it in red, and it just dropped it. It looked like you're watching your gas pump, but it's going to reverse. The numbers are just changing. As he talks, the values of stocks are crashing.
It's okay. It's
Yeah, you started to go like this. While he was talking, it was just dropping. It was really amazing. But back then, people panicked. Fortunately, you notice how it happened in the afternoon?
it closes.
At 4 o'clock, they ring the bell. There's no more trading. It's not like that today. They do futures trading today.
So what's it?
What is it?
It still closes.
I'll tell you in a second.
What's future?
But I'll tell you in a second. But what's that?
What does a ticker tape say?
Yeah, the ticker tape actually tells you the value of individual stocks, so individual company stocks. So it's on the telegraph
How
machine.
did they read it so fast to keep writing it down?
Oh, and they were dropping so much.
Yeah, they're typing.
People were buying something.
Yeah, and it's when it started dropping. People are like, oh, they're looking at value of individual companies, their stocks, and they're looking at this little thing going by. And then all of a sudden, boom, it froze.
Okay, so where were ticker tapes?
Where were they?
In the offices of.
They were in offices, so they had a telegraph line. Yeah, so if you had enough money, a big stockbroker, they would have the little round, little glass bubble, little printer in there, and print out this little strip of paper.
Why does the value go down? People are buying something.
They're selling them.
Yeah, it constantly goes. It goes as long as the stock market's going, it goes.
So the ticker tapers were the first ones to find out the economy.
Well, when the ticker tape started going that day on the 24th, and stockbrokers sit in their office, let's say, on that Thursday afternoon, and they're looking at individual companies, oh, these prices are dropping. Then all of a sudden, because so many stocks are being traded, it overloaded the system.
So all the ticker tape stuff went in 3 hours.
Yeah, and so everyone just thought the whole thing must be falling apart.
So they would
Panic.
Oh, I know, like the first count.
Huh?
Ticker taper during that time. Just like what it felt like.
Oh, just everyone's freaking out.
Yeah.
And by the way,
Yeah.
now you have big, huge garbage cans full of ticker tape, don't you? You ever heard of a ticker tape parade? Big parades in New York City where they go through and they drop these long streaming pieces of paper. That's a legacy of the ticker tape machine. They had all these things, and they would literally save them for parades. It's like when Charles Lindbergh went through in 1927, it was something like 5,000 tons of ticker tape for trial time. Not at the same, not at my
That's at one time. It's like,
You go over Rocket Line, take this. Now they still have ticker tape parades, but obviously they have to manufacture the ticker.
I feel bad for the street sweepers.
Yeah, it's tough to do. Well, after this horrible day, they had a 4-day bank, it's called a bank holiday. So all they did is they shut the doors. Not a big, this happens a lot. It's called a bank holiday. It basically was, calm down. And the president, Secretary of the Treasury, Mellon, came out, head of the Federal Reserve Bank, the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. All these people came out and said, the stock market is strong. Don't panic. Tuesday will be a good day. Don't worry. And when the stock exchange opened Tuesday, so the first time since Black Thursday, it started out okay for an hour, and then a few people started unloading stock. And then what happened?
Then a panic.
October 29th became the biggie. Black Tuesday. And Black Tuesday is still, to this day, the biggest single net value of loss in the stock market in history. There's been more total loss, but never as net value in real terms. In about one day, they lost $16 billion in paper value.
That was Tuesday?
Yeah. People thought they had $16 billion. Gone at the end of the day.
16
Billion.
That's a lot of money to day.
Yeah. So it was huge then. In one 3-hour period, over 16 million shares were sold.
That's a lot.
Guess what happened to the ticker tape?
Broke again.
Yeah, froze the whole day. Just, yeah, boom. People panicked. And that would be the end. Actually, the stock market would never reach the values as it did in that summer and fall of 1929 until the 1960s.
Well, I guess there were worse
When-
times for growth too.
No, well, and then people were just unwilling to invest and speculate. They more invested in business. But this was huge. And so you can argue this is the beginning. I mean, this is when people realize the depression is here. And that's when free fall. Yeah.
So that was the day that most stocks were lost? And most.
Not most stocks, but the most value. Like today, there's significantly more stocks. And so, for example, in 2008, the big crash in September 2008, or in October 2008, I'm sorry, that was a bigger, I know it's not weird, that was a bigger total numbers of stock. But the value was bigger this day.
Okay.
There were big ones. This, well, 1893 is big, 1907, this is the biggie. 1987 was a huge drop. There was a huge crash in 2000 and 2008. And I know what you're saying. We need another crash. Who's with me?
I don't.
Crash, crash, crash. Lord of the Flies. Oh no. It's
So
coming.
wait, so like those ticker tape things
Oh my
stop.
gosh, I caught that reference.
The ticker tape thing stopped
Yeah.
because the value of the stock was so much, like a bunch of people were selling it, so.
So everyone's selling at once, and so they're all trying to input the values into the ticker tape machines, and or the telegraph lines, and the lines overloaded. And they couldn't connect them fast enough. It just
But the people
overwhelmed the system.
to sell because they knew that it was bad.
Well, what happened
Yeah,
was
how
the
much
econ-
pressure was caused?
they were selling. The stocks they had were way overvalued for the actual value of the company. And once they started realizing it, people started selling stock. And then once people started selling, it's like a herd mentality. Oh, then I don't want to be sitting here with stock of this company that's worthless. And so more sell. Oh, they're all selling, and if more start selling, what happens to the price?
What
And
is
you think,
selling?
oh, the price is dropping, and so they sell more.
What is selling it to? Like,
Other brokers.
so no, but no one wants it.
No one is buying.
If no one's buying, then what do you have to do? You have to keep dropping the price. Keep dropping the price. And so there were a lot of companies
Most of the
that,
value's going down.
yeah.
Okay.
So you say, okay, it was $100, I'll sell for 90. No one buys 80, 70, 60, 50. There were a lot of stock by the end of the year. Nobody.
That's crazy. Like, this is pretty worthless.
Mm-hmm. My grandma had a bunch of stock that her dad had, and these just stock certificates,
You read it?
worthless after this crash.
Yeah.
Just just pieces of paper. I can't even remember what company. One was like Falstaff Brewery. These weird companies. They're
That's
just
cool.
they're actually really neat things to have. They weren't neat at the time, I bet. I wonder, boy, this would be nostalgic and fun in 50 years. No.
Hey, let's say you know.
So how does like the value of it, like the beginning of the whole thing, like people don't, they're sitting on like this worthless stock. What makes it worthless? Is just people like lying about how like good it is or
Well,
what?
stock is just like any other kind of commodity, anything you want to buy. And so it's only worth what people are willing to pay.
Oh, okay.
And so if people think that company's going to do better, so let's say you invest in a company. Well, I'll give you a company. A really good example was General Motors. About 3 months ago, people thought General Motors was doing really well. And so if you think General Motors is going to do really well, then you think, okay, in 3 months they're going to be doing even better, aren't they?
Yeah.
So let's buy our stock now, because in 3 months that company profits, or at least looks like it's profiting,
It's gonna be more.
the value of stock will go up,
And then you can sell it.
and then you sell it. Or it'd be better for the country if you kept it long term, but people don't think that way.
So they're like over speculating how well it's gonna do, and then it really doesn't do that well, so everyone's trying to sell it.
Well, do you know what happened to General Motors? Well, they've had a lot of troubles. The biggest one is the fact they lied. They actually rolled the die. they had a serious problem with their ignitions, and they kept it secret. And it was blowing, it killed 12 people and seriously injured over 100. And they knew about it, but they didn't want to admit it because they were worried this would make them look bad and drop their stock value. So they kept it secret. Now it's all coming out.
People are selling a bunch of their stock.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so people are selling their stock thinking, ooh, how's this going to affect General Motors? I better dump it. So General Motors stocks actually dropped by, gosh, like 40% in a couple of weeks.
Oh, man.
And so that's twofold. It's not just that, yeah, they might do a little bit worse, but people are like, if everyone's selling it, I better sell it now before it drops even further. And that's what happens.
Why were stocks being overvalued? Were people just like really optimistic?
Yeah, really. That's what happens in a boom. Everyone thinks it's going to go on forever. And nobody really knew how much people were making. So if there's a general feeling of prosperity, you know, we're all getting rich, then you just believe any outrageous figure that company's told you. You know, we're making more money than ever. We're coming up with new products every day. And they can lie.
And that's why new products like automobiles and stuff.
And there were a lot of new products. So yeah. And that happens. So whenever there's new products, people think, wow, that's new. I better buy.
Yeah.
Happened in the 1990s with computers and internet companies. There was a bubble then. And then it popped in 2000. It popped. That's what they do, though. It's a really appropriate term. Like, poof.
And then it started growing again in 2008.
And that was a different one. A different bubble. And it looks like it's a bubble starting again now.
And what?
Awesome.
It's stock that we're not sure, but what the reason we know there's a bubble when you start getting more people speculating with borrowed money. When people start speculating with borrowed money, it's a bubble.
Well, then why don't people, if people see
It looks like it could be a bubble.
This causes it, causes it.
By the way, you notice I put something on the board?
Is it that?
ow,
Oh my god.
Oh my God, we are all going to die.
Of course.
That is the attitude what happens after the crash.
oh, that's,
During the crash, everybody, or before the crash, we're all going to get rich. Let's borrow and buy and spend. And then what happens when the crash hits?
we're all gonna die.
And no one trusts anybody, no one loans, and that's what happens every time. That actually became a real popular little slogan, a little joking slogan in 2008.
So this is just a boom bust with stocks.
Yeah.
Okay.
And actually, that's one of the things you do this boom bust, because the financial panics are really bad, because then it just destroys the financial system. And that's why the New Deal would do everything it can to try to stop these. And they did. They did an amazing job. There would not be another financial panic from 1929 until 2008. They got rid of all the regulations.
What about 2000?
And as soon as they got rid of, that was a crash, but it wasn't a financial crash. When they got rid of all the regulations, it took them 8 years to destroy it. To the panic. Which is pretty good, 8 years. I mean, that's pretty fast. I'm pretty proud of them. I would have thought at least it would have taken them a decade. But nope. Causes of, I'm being a little facetious.
Really? I wonder about you. Yeah, I read too. But just like when he does his little walk thing, that he just like does a certain walk when he gets all
It was like quiet after he said something.
yeah.
I do a little walk thing.
Yeah, you like move a certain
You
way
get,
when
like,
you're
really
doing circles.
excited about
Okay, so what is the first thing? Overproduction. The biggest issue of any bust is overproduction. And it goes hand in hand with overspeculation, but we're going to start with overproduction first.
Oh my gosh.
And the thing about overproduction is this.
Should we draw this on a circle like last time?
No, this is just going to be causes. It won't be a circle. I know, disappointed, aren't
I
you?
love
Actually,
circles.
yeah, this makes sense. It's endless. Yeah.
Number one, overproduction. In the previous crashes, it was always some new technology, but it was railroads. In this one, though, it's different. Now you have different technologies. And you could probably guess what the big one is. Cars. Overproduction in cars. And you saw the video about Henry Ford and the assembly line. Very quickly, the assembly line is producing significantly more cars than what people could buy. Especially once everybody else started copying that obvious advantage they had.
Yeah, yes, they did limit it.
Yeah.
People buy less than they do.
Even if they just bought the same. But if companies can produce more and more and more, it won't keep up. So basically what happens is in the new economy that we still live in today, buying just the same isn't enough. People have got to buy more. Because as companies, if you get more efficient, because of economies of scale, that's the assembly line, they got to sell more. They just got to sell more. By the way, that's where they would get something called planned obsolescence, where they have things purposely break. So you have to buy more. That's our world today. A very pleasant world, isn't it? There's no, don't worry, there's no environmental or waste issues. Do you get that a little bit? Sorry. Okay.
He kind of looks up over here.
Where do I look? Okay, I'll look over here.
Sorry, I'm like a people analyzer, so I like start.
A people analyzer? No, it's not creepy at all. Next, consumer electronics. Consumer electronics, especially the radios. But also, things like vacuum cleaners, the first washing machine, even somewhat dryers, air conditioning if you have a lot of money, these new consumer electronic things.
They're very nice.
And especially for women. Thankfully now, women can do what they're supposed to do. Vacuum. That actually was a big deal.
They were lost.
That's actually, that's how they marketed it to women. See, now you can finally fulfill your womanly duties. And by the way, this floor is filthy.
What have you been doing?
Yeah.
Can all these women agree?
You notice I'm not saying that to my wife. Construction! Also, there's the real estate boom, there is a construction boom. And that should sound very familiar. There was a construction boom in the US from 2004 to 2007. Yeah, this is all overproduction.
These are all, so wait, is it real
These are the
estate?
three big areas of overproduction.
Real estate and construction?
Yeah, well,
Together? Buildings?
real estate fits in there for speculation, the construction of homes and buildings. That's the real production. And so, for example, today, if you go to, let's say, Phoenix or Las Vegas, Atlanta, the whole state of Florida, there's just all these, just acres of just houses that are for sale. Just because they
There's
produce them
building
in.
houses that people are in.
There's whole neighborhoods in like Phoenix, Las Vegas, and
They're
Atlanta.
always super expensive.
What?
Like, they're all super expensive.
Well, the problem is they're all expensive because they paid so much in the first place that they have to sell them, and they can't. They're super expensive and no one's buying.
Yeah, I feel like they're moving to Atlanta, so.
And what's that
happening in China? Because I saw this thing on, like, they built a ton of stuff and then they see whole like, downtown areas that are just completely abandoned.
Yeah.
They have, like, skyscrapers and stuff.
That happened was it Shanghai? That's where I saw
I
that.
think so, something like that.
And in China, yeah, China's actually about ready to crash. China's on the verge of crashing. This ought to be fun. Number 2, and by the way, China's a classic example. This is over. China just way overproduced everything. But housing's a big one. Because I saw something about that in Shanghai. I think there's like a 90-story skyscraper. There's nothing in it.
What? How
Waters are in
It's just that I'm looking at it.
So why
And I got a good question for you. Why don't we have a 90-story skyscraper in Helena? Yeah.
So why don't companies underproduce that?
And they
higher
are.
demand for their products?
I know that sounds logical, but if you got to pay back your debt, you borrow money to start your business, you got to pay back your debts. You can't afford to drop in sales. I know if you look at it logically, that makes sense, but it doesn't work that way. No,
Oh, there's not.
because if you drop a little bit, what are your competitors going to do?
It's like looking at
Yeah, they'll sell more and drag you out of your market share. You got to pay your debts tomorrow. So I know what you're saying, and it sounds logical, but it just life isn't like that. You gotta pay your debts. You gotta pay your payroll. All those things. 2, over speculation.
And this is where the real estate comes in?
Yeah, that's real estate speculation, stock market speculation. Over speculation. And so people were buying this Florida real estate and it tanked, and then the stock market tanked. But the thing about the speculation is that people had no idea what they're buying. And that's where you get the joke in Florida. At first, they bought the dry land, but pretty soon people are buying land in Florida sight unseen, meaning they're buying swamps. They had no idea.
I mean, one-on-one?
Sight unseen. So they're buying land in Florida. They didn't even know what they're buying, but they just assumed, yeah, and it's going up in value, I'll just buy it. And that's easy to see how a real estate boom like that could bust. Once people realize they're buying swamp, what happened to the value of Florida real estate? Stocks were harder. Because stocks, as we mentioned before, are based upon expectations down the road. How do you know if a company's doing good today? How do you know they increased yesterday?
Oh, people told you.
Okay, yeah. Hey, John, guess what? My company just gained $1 billion. Buy my stock.
Okay.
Might I have an incentive to lie?
Yes.
How do we know a stock company's doing well? How do we know they sold a lot last quarter? How do we know if they're coming up with some new innovation that they'll sell a lot? It's really a risk. They'll tell you.
Not even, how do well
And what does smart and well-informed mean?
Inside.
You roll the die. It's a gamble.
Okay, so that's how it was then when it was like word of mouth that it was being passed along.
Yeah, well, they would come out with these huge, the bigger companies would come out with like elaborate statements, but they never had to be true.
But, so how, like, we do some of this in mitigation, like we've bought stocks and like we've been watching it grow and stuff, but how do they, like, tell those, because you can't lie about that, can you?
You can lie about anything.
Like the people who are making, it's hard to.
Do corporations have to tell truth about their revenues?
Yeah, do they have,
Technically.
do they?
No, of course not.
how do they monitor that though?
Yeah, how do you can't, it's almost impossible to monitor.
Like who is in charge of informing another company?
It's regulated by certain groups. The Securities and Exchange Commission was created by the New Deal. But they can't check everything. And so what they do is they send it to accounting firms that supposedly check. And there is an incentive. And so you're never quite sure.
Yeah.
And so even though Johnson's right, you say about doing your homework, but you're still, when you're very optimistic, then you trust everybody. When your time's bad, you trust nobody. It's a gamble.
Yeah.
And by the way, you look at the stock market right now, even though it's fluctuating a little bit, we're getting into a bubble. And so there's no, stocks have got to be overvalued. But how much? It could be a little bit overvalued, and that means the bubble might go on for a while, or it might have a little correction, not a big deal.
So if people all just spread out and bought different stocks and sell stuff, and then companies did well.
Sure. Okay, so I know what you're saying,
No, I know.
but the allure of
It's so simple on the outside.
speculation has that allure of making money without working. I know, even though.
It's not like fascinating.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, we can just get rich, and so it's like a big, massive casino. And yeah, there are a few people who are smart, but usually they're smart because they luck out, and they're wrong almost as much as they're right, as it would turn out.
Basically, it's the
So, like,
CEO
do stocks count as
money.
No, but they should.
Irish must.
So you can,
Actually,
you
you're-
can buy stocks and use
You pay more taxes for gambling than you do for stocks. We actually,
just
it's a weird world we live in. Okay, so one thing about this. So what we're talking about here is we're gambling in future value. The future value to buy low and sell high. And so one of the big problems with speculation is not only does this lead to a bubble, but if everyone's thinking in the short-term future, it's all short-term thinking. Speculation just fuels short-term gains in the market. You get a short-term gain, you sell, then you throw your hands up. And so that leads to unhealthy activity by companies. Because all companies need to do is not show long-term growth and stability. They have an incentive to show a short-term growth.
So basically, they could do something that would be unhealthy long-term. Like
Yes, which happens all the time.
Like cut a certain practice that.
Use shoddy materials, cut a bunch of workers so you get that short-term gain of not having a lower payroll. Yeah, a lot of those things. It doesn't mean they will, but there's incentives to do that if everybody's speculating. And there's something else that ties in with this. Who's speculating? Has to be people with extra money. But you have wealthy take their big tax cuts from 1925. You have who's guy who runs a corporation? What's it called?
A CEO.
CEO. They're speculating. They're speculating in their own company and others. You have banks speculating.
You don't have the average worker.
You can have everybody speculating.
You don't have the average
So everyone,
worker.
Chief executive officer.
So basically, you don't have the average worker kind of.
No, they can't afford it.
So basically, they have people out of touch.
Well, and the thing about it is that just imagine if that means you could have banks speculating against companies to do well, or even betting that companies will do bad. You can do that.
So like you search the bank and a company say I'm the origin, they can take somebody else.
Yes. I'm not kidding. Yes, they can do that. There's something called derivative, which is kind of like an insurance. So you can buy insurance on your stock in case it drops in value. But so I can buy. Let's say I buy stock in General Motors. I can also buy. It's called a derivative or a swap. Don't ask. They have weird names for stuff. But it's like insurance. So if the stock value drops, I get paid.
pays that.
They don't have to have the money to pay it. They can just sell them. Yeah, it's a weird world we live in.
So,
But I can also, and they were doing it then, I could go and look at you and say, oh yeah, you're buying that company? Oh, I know, it's a disaster. And I can encourage you to buy that company, actually, do all kinds of stuff. But then I can take insurance out on your stock.
wait, what?
So if your stock tumbles, I get paid.
What?
Oh,
That doesn't make any sense.
That's the way the market works.
so like betting something will do bad.
Evolved from cavemen.
That's what you were just saying.
If
So
you,
great.
What does a bank do that?
you have no idea what goes on
People
today.
buy that insurance.
You have no idea, and that's on purpose. It's confusing, so everyone just turns and watches television or whatever and hopes for the
But
best.
you don't know that's for sure.
All right, so the point is, it's all short-term thinking. And also one more thing. You might say, wait a second. If you're doing something that might hurt the company, you're thinking, wow, wait a second, you're hurting the company. No, wait a minute. A corporation is an entity.
Goal is
You're still getting paid your wage, aren't you? In fact, a lot of these places give you bonus for selling more of these things or buying more. So you still get your bonus, and if the company goes under, if the company went under, you still got your money.
That's nice.
And so don't forget that about company. You think, well, that's crazy for the company. No, companies are entities. So that is what's happening. So everyone's speculating. 3.
Wait, why don't people just go buy a bunch of insurance then if things are going bad? Like everyone just buy insurance for everything.
Well, the problem with that is there's no regulation on the insurance. And so I could sell you insurance and don't have a penny to pay for that. And by the way, that's what happened in 2008.
Wait, tell us what you bought a bunch of insurance.
Oh, 3 is 3's financial failure. Yeah, we'll talk about that tomorrow. Before we learn about the bigger, faster, stronger balance test. You guys are going to get big, strong.
We're gonna do this before we learn about
Yeah, I think I have like 30 minutes, then we go down to the computer lab there.
Did you conveniently forget?
And what we're going to do is, and this is very serious for all of you, wear good shoes. Wear good shoes tomorrow, because it is going to be tough.
I think he's being facetious.
Are you going to the big city? Yeah, the big city. You can go to my alma mater. You can drop by Rocky Mountain College.
I don't, okay, let me take are these tests?
I don't blame you.
What takes the test? Isn't it 2 days?
Yeah, it's over 2 days. So everybody in this class will do it Tuesday, and then the same week.
What are like
So you have an
different
English
sections?
class on Wednesday or English on Thursday.
Oh, so it's just a history and English?
Because everybody in junior has either history class.
Oh,
or
that's
English class.
right.
So that's why
So, okay.
they dump everything on our classes. And isn't that great if you lose AP English and AP American History, so you get out of 2 AP classes?
Yeah, that's one of the
Yeah. Mr. Chauncey and I actually brought that up. And everyone just like, that's the look we got, just blank. But they don't know what to do. They
You have to
have to do
opt
it.
out though, or they'll make you make it up. So if you're like not gonna be.
How do you- what do you do?
Actually,
Probably won't, but
Actually, I'm kind of curious. Actually, well, I'm kind of curious what it's going to be on this test, but I'm not confident. It was supposed to be 8 hours. Yeah, I'm not.
How little outside of it? What
Now
if
it's
we
only
didn't leave school?
3 hours and 45 minutes.
No.
They originally were going to do 8 hours. And you think everyone has to. And so you think about 8 hours and you have to do it later, and we don't have limited computers. And then we all.
They don't have to do so. Or is it like
That would have been like 3 or 4 days.
You need about 8 hours. And then think about it. Every computer in the
My friend from Alaska.
Oh, yeah. And
I thought this is like, frustrating.
somebody's making a lot.
I would have like.
And it's not Annie, Adam is going to be all about it. I hope you said that I was not teaching you about LSD or heroin in here. We had a full day about LSD yesterday. We'll use that voice. Huh? No. Are you writing? Go!
Take that!
Hi. Oh, are we going to San Francisco? I can't remember. Oh, shoot! I've heard the song 1,000 times.